to cater for the needs of the people. Remember, when the prices of fuel go up, technically almost all the commodities in the market, their prices will shoot up, and so much in terms of transport, because then this affects everything across. And so a different story altogether. Naomi opens Malindi home to the world. That is Naomi Campbell, overlooking the Indian Ocean. Her idyllic retreat is the epitome of outdoor living, and for more than 20 years has served as her preferred haven. And remember that time when she was considered the ambassador, lots of uproar as to whether we lack individuals that would paint the face of Kenya across the global fraternity. But then again, well, the CS for Tourism said that this was a justified move because, one, she was a frequent visitor to the country, and she has that global outlook, and therefore would be the right individual to sell the country as a tourism destination, or sell the country as a tourism destination. And reprieve for as state shells plan to increase fuel, that we've touched on already. Kezia Obama passes on in England by barely a month after the fallen matriarch of former United States President Barack Obama's grandmother, that is Mama Sarah Onyango Obama, was laid to rest. A solemn ceremony. The family has yet again been thrown into mourning. 81-year-old Kezia, as you can see, is captured there. Oko Obama, the first wife to Barack husband Hussein Obama Sr., passed on in England after a long illness. Kezia was the mother of former U.S. President siblings Malik Obongo Obama and Dr. Rita Auma Obama. Pretty much of an unfortunate, and yes, she speaks of the tough times and the painful moments that she has had to go through after the demise of Mama Sarah Obama, and so much so. We'll be looking at all that as we proceed with the broadcast. And we look at the Daily Nation, what has been captured on the front page. And finally, as police still are clueless as to what could have informed the murder of journalist, she was buried yesterday. Betty Barasa, who worked as a video editor, producer with KBC, was shot dead in her house in Oloolua, Ngong, last week. A story captured on page 12. May her soul rest in eternal peace, even as we hope that justice will certainly prevail. IMF wants Nairobi, Moi and KU trimmed. A story captured on the back page of the Daily Nation, still on the conditions that the lender speaks of in the event that they have to give the country the monies that have been requested by them. We speak of the 200 and about 56 billion thereabout, and that has raised a lot of controversy also across the board. Most of the Kenyans arguing that this is going to burden the taxpayer even further, yet there's not going to be value for money. I mean, that petition that was making rounds the social media calling upon the IMF to shelve this, but then it looks like it has sailed through, but comes along with tough and tight conditions, and we can only wait to see whether they will be followed, and if followed, what then would be the effect of the same across. Now, Obama's in mourning again after losing mother, a story captured on page 12, and may her soul rest in eternal peace. We also join to condole with the family. And the oxygen scandal, counties in charge of procurement, that is at the level of devolution. And what went wrong is the question that is being asked here after a face value, a decision by several county governments to install oxygen plants, that is to wean themselves off commercial suppliers, is a stroke of genius. And on the ground, however, things are different. Big breakdowns, technological challenges are denying patients the life-saving gas. A story captured on page 6 and 7. This has been talked about for quite a while right now. And of course, when it comes to the aspect of numbers, about 880 tons of oxygen are required to manage COVID-19 patients in the country as at now, and 75 is the number of oxygen plants in the country, according to Health CS Mutahi Kagwe, way below what is the expectation, and so much has played out. Most of the people have lost their lives. They lost their lives just because they were not able to access the same. So looking at the breakdowns, one, according to the Council of Governors, counties have about 58 oxygen plants of which only 42 are functional. And when it comes to the aspect of quality, the quality of oxygen from some of the plants is in question and could be another factor contributing to patient deaths. And the expertise argue that most counties lack biomedical engineers to run the oxygen plants, leading to breakdowns. We can only hope that such will be addressed to avoid, more loss of life. And as the CS had, earlier on said, it is important that if you have these cylinders, make sure that you for them or present them so at least they can proceed to save lives. On the aspect of the BBI, the team is confident that referendum will be held in August. Now, this is another push, contrary to what was speculated, was expected earlier on, that it should play out somewhere in June, July. And so proponents of the Building Bridges initiative now say that the referendum proposed constitutional changes should be held by August. They want to ensure that the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020 is passed by Parliament and handed to President Kenyatta before the end of next month. Should the President promptly notify the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to conduct a referendum, well, the 90-day statutory countdown will begin immediately, as captured on page 10 of the Daily Nation. We speak of that later on the broadcast. A different story altogether. 2017 repeat poll case hounds judge. Yes, that one on CJ Such we have touched on the previous paper, or that is on the People Daily. And speaking of KDF, job scandal, victims left with empty accounts. Another round of recruitment, another lot of gullible victims who paid millions of shillings for phantom slots for relatives in the Kenya Defense Forces. This has been stopped for the longest of time, or has been discouraged, but you find that, in search of jobs and the dire situation in the country, most of the people would even opt to dish out cash just so they can see whether the individuals or the key individuals in the KDF exercise will probably get to have to endorse their very own kins to ensure that they get these positions. But sadly, it is not always a lucky occurrence. Let's look at what the front page of the Standard newspaper speaks of. And let's see, here we are. The Standard newspaper, teachers, civil servants hit in a new pay freeze. That is a bit different from all the stories that have been captured on the front page of these ones, or these are the papers. Treasury commits about 8 billion, which is only 10% of amount that has been requested for pay reviews as country reels from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. A story captured on page 5 that in regards to matters education, so much is playing out. And of course, KCPE students also are expecting to get their results. And we will be here to make sure that our educational reporters keep you up to par. That is Andreen and Sharon Baranga eagerly waiting to present that, even as the CS maintains that we'll have our students going back to school on the anticipated time, that is in May the 10th, as opposed to fears that were allayed earlier on, or the fears that were projected earlier on, that we might have a delay on having our students going back to school. State deal that kept oil prices from rising. That's also an interesting story that I'm sure will get very many people excited. I've touched on already. The first story is also how doctors removed growth on patients' face, which is a commendable thing. You have seen that picture of this mama going round, and I mean, that is something worth celebrating. We can only hope that she recovers pretty much fast. And of course, a story captured on page 4, Somalia's sanctions threat, a story captured on page 27, that is on the global news. Across so much tension playing out in Somalia, what does it mean for this nation? What is the way forward, even as it continues to struggle on matters terrorism, on matters trying to stay afloat, and the political instability that is being witnessed there, threats or risking the aspect of sanctions across. Whether this would play out or not is a question of wait and see, and we all know how much sanctions can indeed hurt an economy. Struck giraffes rescued, story captured on page 20. Referee Candy's love for soccer and camera. Also another story on an individual in regards to matters sports, a story captured on page 54 and 55. Away from it, on a feature story as captured inside, woman who fixed Uhuru's chase bike. That's an interesting one. You might need to grab a copy and get to understand what plays out. Beat turned petty thief to a winner of hearts. In the wake of his father's death, 11-year-old Daniel Simiyu made peace with the estranged mother. I mean, crimes of passion, crimes at the level of homes, these call them homicides and all that, hugely being discouraged. But then again, also the main thing is just what could be informing this. That is the biggest question. Mental health attributed to the same, the tough times during this time of COVID-19 attributed to the same. And we can only hope that we get to a point where we have this discussion and therefore probably try and limit and reduce these cases that we witnessed today. That is on the papers this morning. We'll be looking at them extensively, even as we ponder on the first stories or the key stories as captured right there briefly. Let's see what the roads are like this morning. And here we are, right here in Nairobi. I can see just from a glance or a quick glance that there is some bit of traffic across the key roads. And let's start off somewhere at this point or the central point and coming or looking at the sides of Mombasa Road. This is Mombasa Road here. You can see that even as you get to connect to Mombasa Road from Embakasi, and that is Airport Road, there is traffic here as you come to connect to it around Cabanas, and therefore as such is expected. It's such a common occurrence, especially on a weekdays. That is when you get yourself to Mombasa Road. In most cases you find down there's not much of traffic, then you come and get 10 minutes of traffic here. So that means when you get to around Cabanas there, you will experience this level of traffic or levels of traffic. But then you can tell that on Mombasa Road it is flowing. On Airport Road is where it's a bit heavy, as you can see right here as you get to connect there. And proceeding on to Imara Daima, there is traffic, as you can see, pretty heavy. And so if you're taking that direction, you know what to expect. Then it eases up all the way down as you proceed up to the level of the likes of Capital Center and Airtel Center, all the way down. The tenets of traffic you can see, and then it eases up all the way down, moves to Capital Center as you have seen right there, and all the way to this point where you get to connect to the Nyayo National Stadium. You get to connect to the sides of Langata. You see that there's heavy traffic, as you can tell there, and crossing over to this other side, the traffic is still on. And so if you're taking that direction, you will know what it is that you expect. Let's go a little bit on a different direction. Bunyala is pretty much of an ease this morning. As you can see, Bunyala Road doesn't look as ugly much as it gets to connect to Mombasa Road. And this other side, Langata Road, is also not looking so bad this morning. As you can see, this is Langata Road all the way to and from a town. Road works happening there somewhere as you connect to Mbagathi Way. This has been happening for the better part of the week, but it looks like it does not cause much of alarm in terms of traffic. And so Langata Road all the way down is doing good, and same applies to Mbagathi Road, as you can see. While these road works somewhere here, yes, going down to Mbagathi Road, it is all rosy and looking all good, connecting to the likes of Upper Hill. Around Upper Hill, not much of traffic, and therefore no cause for alarm if taking that direction. Coming all the way to around City Mortuary as you connect to Ngong Road. Ngong Road here, around China Center, Kingston Residence. Some sternness, just small bits of traffic, but it does not look as bad as you can see going all the way down as you find yourself to the city or your way into the city. Ngong Road is not bad this morning. On this other side, Kenyatta Avenue up to Nyayo House, it is pretty much of an ease, not much of traffic, actually no traffic at all, and so you need not to worry. And here we are, Milimani Road, pretty much of an ease this morning. As you can see, not much of traffic connecting us to the likes of State House Road. It is moving, and so we need not to worry when taking that direction. And what is this road? Let's see. That speaks of some bit of traffic. That should still be Mombasa Road, and so not really, we've touched on that already. Somewhere around Pangani Shopping Center, as you get yourself into the city, coming from different roads, that is Limuru Road, coming from Angara, coming all the way from Pangani, that is from Thika Road. There is really not much for worry coming from Parklands too, as you can see, and Westlands. Well, the roads are pretty much of an ease. Westlands all the way the size of Villa Rosa Kempinski, pretty much of an ease. Parklands on this other side is also looking good. Limuru Road on this other side, as you can tell, is looking all good, and so no cause for alarm. Muthaiga Road on the other bit is also not as bad this morning, and so coming to connect through Thika Road, as you can tell, it's not as heavy as it has always been, especially around Pangani Place apartments. Kenya Utalii going down to and from town. Thika Road is looking all rosy this morning, as you can tell, and also on this other side, Outer Ring Road is also not looking so bad as you come to connect to the likes of Juja Road and Komarok. As you can tell there, it is looking all rosy. So let's drop it as it now. In case there's anything that will be there, I will update you accordingly. And now we look at what my team has prepared. Court of Appeal Judge Lady Justice Martha Koome was on Wednesday interviewed by JSC for the post of Chief Justice. Martha, who is vying for the position for the second time, said that she will transform the leadership of the judiciary. During the interview, Martha said that property acquired before marriage should not be shared among the spouses, as Joash Onsari tells us.
On Wednesday, Lady Justice Martha Koome appeared controversial on matters marriage, where she said marriage is not a leeway to owning property gained by either party before marriage.
If I got married today, I have my property. My spouse will not be entitled to my property. The property I had before marriage, that's my property. And vice versa.
On resolving the issue, 41 judges who have been waiting for appointment by the president for months on end, Judge Martha Koome said that if she becomes the next Chief Justice, she would talk with the president to see the issue is resolved for smooth running of the judiciary.
So we must discuss this issue of 41 with the president. In that atmosphere of we are serving Kenyans, all of us, and we are concerned about the administration of justice, and we find out where the problem is, resolve it, and get the judges in office.
Martha Koome also said if given the opportunity, she will improve how commercial courts handle cases to revive trust of investors in our judicial system.
And you know, commercial transactions really begin with an agreement. People who entered into an agreement can always sit down and resolve the problem arising out of the agreement. So mediation, ADL, alternative dispute resolution, jump-starting it, we'll see why things are going to clog the courts.
Further, Martha Koome suggested for the operationalization of the Judiciary Fund to facilitate judicial activities.
Beginning with the admin, I think the solution is to get the Judiciary Fund operationalized.
On Thursday, Justice Marete D.K. Njage will face the GSC interviewing panel. Joash Onsare, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, the new curfew regulations will be effective until May the 29th. This is according to a Gazette notice from Interior Cabinet Secretary, that is Fred Matiang'i, that emphasizes that the curfew regulations in the 5 counties marked red zone shall remain as is. Meanwhile, the Council of Governors have pointed out to a possible shortage of COVID-19 vaccines as a result of increased demands and uptake among Kenyans. Zainab Mohammed with the details.
When the new curfew hours was announced on the 26th of March, President Uhuru Kenyatta said the regulations will be in use until further notice, a matter that gave many Kenyans anxiety, not knowing how long the regulations will be in place. But that's over now, as a Gazette notice from the Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i says the new curfew regulations shall expire on May 29th. The Gazette notice, however, emphasizes that the new curfew hours in the red zone shall remain as is. Meanwhile, the Council of Governors have pointed out to a possible shortage of COVID-19 vaccines due to increased uptake among Kenyans. According to Kisumu Governor Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, most of the supplies in the region have been depleted.
Since the leadership of both the national and county government took the vaccine publicly, the confidence of the citizens was enhanced, and there's a serious demand for the vaccine now. Many county governments have depleted resources of what they had in store. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a good sign, but also a challenge since we have a shortage in other counties in the country and globally.
The governors further say, even though the positivity rate in the country is slowly going down, the number of infections in the counties bordering the red zone is rising steadily.
We note that community transmissions have started increasing, and other counties out of the zoned area, that is mainly Nairobi and Nakuru, are experiencing a surge in COVID-19 infections, including my own county, Kisumu.
Nationally, the country has recorded 981 new COVID-19 cases from a sample size of 7,528 tested in the last 24 hours. The total confirmed positive cases are now standing at 148,128 cases. 3 people have succumbed to the virus in the last 24 hours, whereas 23 others died on diverse deaths in the last month, pushing the national COVID-19 fatalities to 2,420 deaths. Zainab Mohammed, TV47.
Now, at least 20 people have been arrested for allegedly leaking the ongoing KCSE exam. Speaking from the Kenya High School, where he was inspecting the examination process, Education CS George Magoha has said that those involved in exam malpractices will face the law. Andrew Kilemi with that report.
Day 12 of KCSE examination across the country and cases of malpractice are on the rise. Education CS Professor George Magoha says at least 20 people have been arrested so far.
The few culprits, most of whom have now been arrested, are going to pay for the consequences.
In Mandera County, a center manager and 2 supervisors were arrested for allegedly leaking the exam in El Hagarsu Mixed Secondary School. 2 education officers were arrested in Kerongorori Mixed Center in Kisii, while 1 manager was arrested in Garissa at Huda Secondary School. In Kisumu and Home of Untold counties, 2 officers were arrested for similar allegations.
Why are we confusing our children? And as I keep saying, Shetani lazima atashindwa.
CS Magoha has, however, stated that the exam distribution process has been going on well in different parts of the country, despite the heavy rains experienced in some parts of the country.
This is to warn the candidates for the remaining papers that we shall always know when the result has been transmitted to you, because the time is so short that you are most likely just to repeat what has been sent to you.
This even as the Ministry of Education assures candidates and parents of safe travel into and out of the COVID-19 infected zones.
The government, through the Ministry of Education, has already put in place measures to ensure smooth travel of all candidates to their homes, including those entering, leaving and passing through the 5 counties that are under partial lockdown.
As the KCSE examination enters day 12, the Ministry of Education has continued to beef up security in examination centers, even as over 20 people are arrested so far in a bid to ensure free and fair process. Andreen Kilemi, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, even as digital loans temporarily save the day, with instant cash, they often represent a significant share of the borrower's income, which means that borrowers struggle to repay the loans. With no legal framework governing digital lenders, borrowers will continue to seek funds from several platforms, at the same time creating a borrow from Peter, pay to Paul scenario.
Over the past 10 years, mobile-based lending has grown tremendously in the country. Estimates put the number of mobile lending platforms at about 50. The industry is largely unregulated, but includes major financial players, including commercial banks. These lending services have been made possible by the ballooning financial technology or fintech industry.
Digital lenders are known for helping SMEs and MSMEs and informal sector entrepreneurs have access to working capital very quickly.
Wakati kabisa una pesa inaokolea ile haja ulikuwa nayo wakati unakopa.
Despite their small size, mobile loans are often very expensive. They charge between 365% to 876% interest for each loan, besides processing fees levied. Further, borrowers are also charged for late payments.
Unfortunately, there are some actors in the market who use very illegal means for debt collection, and that's becoming a bit of a problem. So the other tag is also something we're affiliated with, but we're mostly known for helping entrepreneurs.
Interest yake, especially wakati umedelay kulipa ama wakati umekopa big amount, their interest is high.
Digital lenders are unregulated since they are not defined as financial institutions under the current Banking Act, the Microfinance Act, nor the Central Bank of Kenya Act. Currently, the Central Bank of Kenya Amendment Bill before Parliament requires digital money lenders to obtain annual licenses from the Central Bank of Kenya. It also contains governance provisions and provides for prescription of minimum capital requirements for digital money lenders. If enacted in its current form, it will require digital money lenders to supply their prominent terms and conditions to the CBK and to announce their interest rates when advertising their services. A good number of the regulated financial institutions that also offer digital credit products have also not complied with the latest interest cap, arguing that they charge a quote-unquote facilitation fee and not interest on the digital credit products.
And pricing it can be lower. The challenge is, I think people are misunderstanding that the only way pricing will come down is if we are regulated, because the way our businesses work is we measure risk, right? And the fact that there's no regulation means there's additional risk, because the regulation is a rule book. It tells you what you can and cannot do, and that de-risks the game. Right, so as soon as regulation comes into play, it will reduce the cost of our money, because that's how it works. The other thing we're saying is there's also a cost to fraud. We need to work on certain systemic infrastructure issues in this market to deal with fraud. The other issue we're talking about is the cost of transactions. If my loan is 500 shillings and I'm paying 22 shillings to send you that money, I have to move that charge to the customer, right? Because we're also in business.
Involving third parties without their consent is also against the law.
Guarantor is illegal. It's not. You cannot enforce that in a court of law. So it's illegal. So there's nothing like a guarantor unless the guarantor has expressly consented to being a guarantor.
What can be done to improve the system so that everyone benefits? Mobile-based lenders should take a more cautious approach to the development of digital credit markets. Secondly, the establishment of governing rules through the ongoing amendment of the Central Bank of Kenya Act. Thirdly, loan disclosures should include key terms and all conditions for the lending products. Privately held and foreign-owned digital lenders should be subject to public disclosure laws. And finally, changes to the current digital credit system across all the lending categories.
Kenyans will continue grappling with high interest rates from mobile money loans until the government comes up with regulations to cover the vice. Grace Josephine reporting for TV47.
And from personal to national level, for the past 7 years, Kenya's debt has sharply risen from a manageable 1.79 trillion shillings debt in 2013 to an alarming 7.285 trillion shillings debt in 2020. Now, this comes even as the country continues to pile more debts on the existing ones, with the current debt ceiling of 9 trillion shillings poised to be pushed even higher in the coming months. For this reason, the President Uhuru Kenyatta government that took over in 2013, just when the debt figures began to has found itself at the center of the storm, even as it refutes claims that the country is headed into a debt distress. But who is fooling whom? David Mudoka reports.
In 2013, just as President Uhuru Kenyatta was taking over from his predecessor Mwai Kibaki, the country seemed headed towards the right debt direction. At the time, an arguably manageable debt of 1.79 trillion shillings comprising of 981.9 billion shillings domestic debt and 812.7 billion shillings external debt stood in the way of the exchequer and the break-even point. 7 years on, that debt has shot up 4 times. As at November last year, the national debt stood at 7.25 trillion shillings, with 3.77 trillion shillings being sourced from external lenders and the remaining 3.48 trillion shillings procured locally. But how does the country find itself in such a position 7 years down the line? How did 1.79 trillion shillings of debt in 2013 become 7.25 trillion shillings worth of debt in just a span of 7 years? Increased spending has been at the center of the swelling figures, with the government forced to seek loans year in, year out to support its budget, repay loans and carry out infrastructure development.
The issue of debt is not about incurring debt, it's about how you use that debt. Are you using that debt to expand your economy? Are you using that debt to expand your GDP? Are you using that debt to open up your country?
To set the pace to what has since become a borrowing binge by the government in those 7 years, President Kenyatta announced the borrowing of the first Eurobond, totaling to 280 billion shillings in June 2014, meant for budgetary support and repayment of a syndicate loan. 4 years later, the government in 2018 went for another Eurobond, netting 202 billion shillings. In an interview in December that year, President Kenyatta defended the borrowing amid piling pressure on the insatiable appetite for loans.
I have almost 60% of the Republic of Kenya connected to power. My friend, for those kind of reasons, I will borrow. Not to consume, to develop.
Development.
Right. To develop.
Even before the dust from Eurobond Season 2 could settle, in 2019 the government went to the international market again and borrowed another 210 billion shillings to repay other loans and fund unspecified infrastructure projects. It now remains a matter of when, not if, the country will receive another 508 billion shillings Eurobond loan, bringing the total amount of Eurobond loans procured by the Kenyatta administration to 1.2 trillion shillings. The expensive commercial Eurobonds come on top of other loans sought by the Kenyan administration in those 7 years, most notably from the International Monetary Fund (IMF), as well as from commercial banks. Rampant misappropriation of the loans either through corruption or by investing in dormant projects has seen the government unable to service the ballooning debt, thus resorting to borrowing from Peter to pay Paul.
Juu wanachukua mikopo, wanapatia mabwanyenye, wanakura. Wako na maskado na hakuna pahali wanawapeleka.
Maendeleo si mbaya na kila mtu angependa maendeleo, lakini shida iliyoko ni hii. Hiyo maendeleo inamuaffect mwananchi wa kawaida, sababu hii mikopo ni lazima itarudi kwetu.
For those reasons, the government has come under fire from a section of Kenyans who, in a daring social media attempt earlier this month, called on the IMF to stop processing loans to Kenya. However, the IMF went on to lend Kenya a 255.9 billion shillings loan and approve the latest Eurobond loan, albeit with stricter conditions touching on transparency and accountability. The borrowing trend could see the debt burden hit 10 trillion shillings by the time President Kenyatta's last budget is implemented in 2023, amid plans to raise the debt ceiling past 9 trillion shillings. David Mudoka, TV 47.
past 9 trillion shillings to about 12 trillion. The biggest problem then, as many say, is not the incurring of debt, but definitely the fact that we're not able to manage this same, and we have lots of money that are going into loss in regards to that, yet the taxpayer remains with the burden of paying this. Senator James Orengo says, when you look at reports of the Auditor General, I think we are gangsters. We are a nation not just of thieves. This is a bandit economy, and we must describe as such. And these statements we've had for quite a long time. The very same individuals at the top of the helm acknowledge that there is a problem, but just what are they doing towards addressing this? So, and we get briefly into that. We get the view of the guests of the day this morning. We have Rigathi Gachagua, Member of Parliament Madeira, and we also have Honorable Eseli Simiyu, Member of Parliament Tongaran. Honorable Rigathi Gachagua will be joining us virtually. Honorable Simiyu is with me in studio. Gentlemen, thank you so much for finding time to be with us this morning. Let's speak matters debt. We've not heard from you, Honorable Eseli Simiyu, on the IMF factor. It's been quite a while since we had you on set.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it's all in all wrong to borrow.
Yeah.
I think the circumstances dictate that we borrow. But I think it's a question of how did we get here. That's where the problem is.
Okay.
It's not whether we must borrow or should not borrow at this moment. It's what got us there in the first place. I think what got us there is profligate borrowing, money that was not put to good use, and some of it going into overpriced projects.
Right.
So when a project is overpriced, like the SGR, for example, and you borrowed so much money that your revenue is now committed to repaying those debts. When you add on more, definitely Kenyans will question. But I think in the situation we are in, it's so dire that it's like you have to borrow from Paul to pay Peter,
right,
and like to just keep afloat, to keep your shoulders above water, and that's a dangerous situation.
Well, lots of policies have been put aboard towards us dealing with this aspect of debt. One, there is that bill in Parliament in regards to how we manage the debt. I mean, there's so much that has been put aboard as to how we deal with the aspect of corruption, so at least we can get accountability of this. Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, first, thank you for finding time to be with us this morning. What do you make of the scenario? I mean, this is going to go to the level of Parliament if at all there's going to be a shoot-up of the debt ceiling as it stands right now. So pushing it to around 12 trillion would probably detrimentally harm the taxpayer. What do you make of it?
Thank you, Madam. I think we are in unprecedented times. Looking back during the Kibaki era, by the time President Moi exited and President Kibaki came in, by the time the Kibaki was handing over, he had borrowed 1.4 trillion. And down the line, we are now almost on officially 8.4 trillion. And what is very sad is that despite the amount of borrowing that has been done and so much money has been borrowed, that money is not being felt by the ordinary Kenyan, because that money is supposed to be in circulation. And I agree with the Honorable Eseli that there has been a lot of overpricing on projects, such that a project that is supposed to take so much, it is double. And of course, the extra money finds its way elsewhere, and that is why it is not available to circulate here on the ground where the people can feel it. You know, Kibaki having borrowed 1.4 trillion, there was a lot of money circulating in the country, and people could feel the effect of that money. But now, having borrowed, almost 8 times of that amount of money, there is nothing that is being felt on the ground. So we want to say that you cannot grow without borrowing, but let us borrow prudently. Let us apply the money in a prudent manner, such that the money helps the country. At the same time, it spurs economic growth, and the money can be felt by the ordinary Kenyan. Because it is sad that with 8 trillion, Everybody is saying there is no money in the country. And be as it may, most of this money that we have borrowed has come with conditions. And I have a problem with that. And in fact, that is why I introduced the Procurement Amendment Bill 2018, because the foreigners have been bringing the money here with attached conditions. They give us the money, they follow it up with their contract, they procure all the materials overseas, they bring their workers from overseas, and then they repatriate the profits. That is why you've borrowed so much money, like for SGR, but that money is not being felt by anybody, because all the materials have come from China, all the workers have come from China. In fact, they are paid in China. You know, they send their salaries to China, and then they repatriate the profits. So you find we have a very big debt, yet that money is not available in the country. And that is the problem that Kenyans are having. So that is why when news that we are getting another, loan from IMF, Kenyans were up in arms, because they are saying we are borrowing all this money, but where is it? We don't feel it. It is not in circulation. It is not in the local economy.
Okay. What informs, maybe just to ask Honorable Eseli, what informs this point where, there's that borrowing and the conditions have to be there, and some of these conditions, a majority of these conditions touch us hugely on this other side, and looking at them, sometimes they appear as though they're coming in to try and ensure that there's value for that money and accountability, but in real sense, in another way, it, in a way, burdens or makes it even tougher for people to stay afloat. Like for instance, this one that has been captured on the dailies that speaks, I don't know whether it's on the front page of the Standard newspaper, that somewhere at the back they speak of, at the back page of either the Standard or the Daily Nation. Yes, there's that one. It's the Daily Nation, right? That says this has to go to the level of these entities that we speak of, our main schools, yeah? And so IMF wants Nairobi, Moi, and KU trimmed. That is one thing that we probably need to look at. Do we lack social contracts that protect us from, the deals that we negotiate? Why is it that in most cases it's not a 50-50 affair, that the lender benefits and on the other hand, we get to benefit?
You see, I think the problem we are having here is, who are the people negotiating for these loans? Okay,
and so the leaders have failed, the negotiators
have?
The
negotiators, unless we don't have proper negotiators at Treasury. Because if you are going to negotiate for a loan, definitely there are conditionalities. You need, especially if you are not using the bilateral, the known people like IMF and World Bank, if you are, say, taking a loan from China or things like that, you have to have serious negotiators, people who understand what they are doing and they understand the impact of what they are doing. Because if you don't have proper negotiations, then you'll have conditions that are very harmful. And IMF and World Bank have a history of having conditions and programs that virtually, destabilize economically the countries that they are trying to lend money to. So like now when they are talking about the universities, if in my view, these universities are understaffed, especially on the academic staff. So when they are saying they want to trim them, what kind of quality of education are you getting from there? And remember, they are targeting the 2 universities that are the top in Kenya and actually in Africa. So they want to destroy that. I think we need to have proper negotiations. This should not be allowed. Because when they say you need to trim down the staff and things like that, haven't they realized that even the staff contingent that's in some departments in these universities is inadequate? So I think this is a question of, we are in this situation because, as they say, beggars are not choosers. We are not borrowing because we want money for development. We are borrowing because we are in a hole. So we are beggars. And once you are beggars, you can't choose. And that's where the problem is. But I think it started because the negotiators at Treasury failed in the first place. The loans that we've taken in the Jubilee administration, trillions and trillions of shillings, where has this gone to? And I think what we need to do, we need to bite the bullet and sort of trace where this money went. Because if we are borrowing to steal, we borrow and steal half of it, so it's only half that gets on the ground, and even that half that gets on the ground is not in the form of money, it's in the form of it was like going to China and buying the SGR and they just come and fix it here. And the money stays there. So I think these are things that we need to look at. Okay. But I think our negotiators at Treasury need to wake up.
All right. And speaking of which, Honorable Rigathi, in about a minute or so, Musalia Mudavadi and many other economists argue that we are better off by far having IMF on our side, having World Bank on our side, as opposed to them, putting us somewhere at bay, having, experienced the same prior or before, and it wasn't looking so good for us. But even as we say that, yes, we are better off having them on our side, do we genuinely need to engage them in terms of giving us loans, looking at the situation in the country as of today?
Well, from where we are, we really don't have a choice.
Okay.
Because you see, we have a 3 trillion budget, but our revenue collection is about 1.4 trillion. And we have a lot of loans, the Eurobonds and others that are due and that needs to be paid. At the same time, we need to bridge the gap because there is a deficit. So there is no way now we can escape the debt, because with our 1.4 revenue collection, 1.4 trillion collection against a 3 trillion budget, we have a deficit of 1.6 trillion budget deficit. Therefore, we don't have a choice. We have to engage the IMF. We have to engage the World Bank. But be as it may, I think as we do this, Kenyans feel insulted when we are borrowing because we have a deficit, we are in a corner, we are in a hole, as the Honorable Eseli puts it, and then we have the wrong priorities. We are saying we are in trouble, we need money to bridge the deficit so that we can fast track and keep the development agenda going on, we can pay salaries and all. And then along the line, you find we have other things that in the view of Kenyans are not a priority. If you look at the figures that have been released on monies that have been given to fight COVID-19, if you ask the ordinary Kenyan, nobody has felt that money. That money has not trickled down for interventions to assist those who have been put in a corner by the measures that have been taken to combat COVID-19. Okay. Where is the money? And you feel terrible, when you talk about the COVID-19 billionaires. This is, money that was given, for intervention on such a serious pandemic, and then this money has disappeared down the line. And 1 year, nobody has been held to account. It is in public knowledge that this money has been diverted, it has been siphoned, yet no action has been taken. That is why you saw Kenyans protest, petitioning the IMF. We don't need this money because we don't feel it, we don't see it. So I think we need to really look at this matter in a very critical manner to win back the public confidence that it is good to borrow and people can agree we are borrowing for a good cause and they can feel that money. But you see, Kenyans are agitated that they are being tied to pay these loans for years to come, yet they don't feel that money and they don't see it. So that is where the issue is, and I am told that they want to come to Parliament to ask us to increase the debt ceiling. I personally will vote against it. I'm not convinced that we need to do that because I think it is reckless. I don't think it is right. I think we need to stay within the debt ceiling that we are having currently, and we work within what we have. Let us not overreach ourselves with programs and things that are not right. And that is why, like myself and a few of my colleagues, things like the BBI is not a priority, to spend 14 billion when we are borrowing, to bring an extra 20 billion, yearly to the national budget when we have a deficit. We think that we need to be rationalized in terms of priorities. Okay. What are our priorities? How come we want now to change the constitution to increase the burden to the country and to the people of Kenya, to the taxpayer, yet we are struggling, we are borrowing. We don't have enough to keep us going. Yet, we are in a reckless manner trying now again to create new avenues of money spending. Yet we are not able to fund the current needs that we have as a country.
Mheshimiwa, they say that inside the document of amending the constitution lies a solution to dealing with matters graft. And if at all we are to go through this process and we generally get answers to that, don't you think then it will be worth? I will allow you to answer that question after this break.
As the country gears up for possible BBI referendum and 2022 general elections.
As the salvos enter too familiar territory,
William Ruto will serve his 5 years term as the deputy president.
Pundits Night is here to give you powerful, thought-provoking political commentaries.
The mountain can produce a country.
Give Moses Kuria a chance to respond. Let me ask you this. Are you not taking advantage of first my situation?
You talk about the people with the ultimate power.
Kikuyus will vote for somebody from outside their community to be the next president of this country.
We talk to the newsmakers, the opinion shapers, and the pundits.
Fair enough. I believe
that part so that I don't lose.
As we dissect everything you need to know to make an informed decision. How well do you know what's happening around you? Morning Cafe with heated political debates.
The position of the Prime Minister will go to a party with the most elected members.
I clearly know that neither Raila nor Ruto are in the work plan on the roadmap for transition as far as the government is concerned.
Informative health discussions, business, farming, Tasty Wednesday, Fitness Thursday, and Feel Good Friday with amazing DJs, celebs, and music bands.
Back to the seasons of my youth.
Every Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Did you know that your business keeps our economy running?
You need the skill, not the papers.
Always tell yourselves, one day